The Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business Podcast brings you a unique view of Mesa through its vibrant business community and the subjects that are important. The podcast is produced in the Mesa Chamber of Commerce Media Studio, sponsored by the University of Phoenix. Our podcast is hosted by Mesa Chamber of Commerce CEO Sally Harrison. Please enjoy this episode of the Mesa Chamber Inside Business Podcast.
Hi, I'm Sally Harrison, the President and CEO of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, and today we are in the University of Phoenix podcast studio with Mayor John Giles.
How are you, Madam President?
I am good. I'm good. Yeah, lots going on in Mesa.
Yes, always. But I know we're talking today about the election, which is, I thank you for the opportunity to do that. This is an important topic, and I think it's incumbent on us to get as much information out so people feel prepared to go to the ballot box.
That's right. And November is right around the corner.
Absolutely.
I am shocked how fast this year has gone.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it has been crazy. So talk about why midterm elections are so important for the residents of Mesa.
You know, sometimes I talk to people about the role that city government plays in their life because it's really, sometimes it's below radar. I mean, we all are very patriotic Americans, right? And we understand the importance of voting in a presidential election and know that's our patriotic duty and we have an obligation to vote. But when you look at what role government actually plays in your life, state and local government has a whole lot more to do with you and your life and your pocketbook and what happens and what government does or doesn't do for you, frankly, than the presidential election does.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a good reminder for all of us, you know, that this coming election, which is as a midterm election, and some people think, oh, it's, you know, I'm not as religious about voting in those elections as other elections. That's not a good idea because we are electing governors and senators and school board people, and we're amending the Mesa City Charter, and you know there's all kinds of issues on this ballot that have a direct impact on everybody's life in the city of Mesa.
Well, and very important things.
Absolutely. We
have a big city.
Yes.
You have a big job.
I have a great job. I'm grateful for this job. It's a lot of fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
What can Mesa residents expect to see on their midterm election ballot that will have the most impact on our local level?
Well, we have some Mesa City issues. We have 4 questions for voters on this ballot. And then we have, in the primary election, we had 3 city council seats that were open. Every 2 years, you know, we elect half of our city council, and the other 2 years we elect a mayor and the rest of the city council. So 3 seats were open. 2 of them were decided in the primary, but 1 city council seat remains to be decided in the general election. That's District 4, Trista Glover and Vice Mayor Jen Duff. So that will be resolved. Scott Summers in District 6 and Alicia Goforth in District 5 were already elected in the primary. But so in addition to selecting our city council, there are 4 questions that the Mesa City Council has referred to the ballot because we need our voters to tell us what to do. There's a question 1 and a question 2. So as people are driving around town, they're going to see, maybe they're a little confused because the law tells us, you know, how we label these things. And so there's 2 questions, question 1, question 2, and then there's 2 propositions, Prop 476, 477. So quickly, question 1 is home rule. That might sound familiar because this is something that we vote on every 4 years.
Yes.
And it's very important. Home rule goes back to the 1980s when some people might remember Jerry Brown in California, and there was a movement back in California in the late 1970s to put limits on how much government could spend. And that movement made its way into Arizona eventually. And so in the early, so right now we have a law in Arizona that says that cities and towns can't spend per capita any more money than they did back in 1980. And so in order to do that, we have to go to the voters and say, hey, voters, you have approved some additional funds for things like, you know, a public safety sales tax to hire more police officers, more firefighters, or certain things that the voters have already approved. We can't spend that money unless the voters give us the authority to come up with our own budgets and spend the money that has previously been authorized by the voters. So that's this kind of awkward question we have to ask every 4 years. it does not raise taxes.
Right.
All it says is that yes, Mesa City government, you can adopt a budget to spend the money that you have. Okay, so that's question one. So we really hope that the voters understand that and vote for that so that we can deliver the things the voters have previously authorized us to do.
Well, and the chamber has always supported that. I mean, it's really a no-brainer.
Yes, I agree. The chamber, and it's very seldom that you get people that are suggesting that we ought to not vote for home rule. The impact of that would, if it were to not pass, it would be pretty devastating.
How many millions?
About 80 or 90. I mean, we won't know until it happens because it's based on what the population is, and in comparison to the per capita compared to 1980. So I don't mean to make it complicated, but it would be $80-90 million. That means we would be laying off a lot of Mesa City employees. We'd be closing. I mean, I don't mean to make it sound more dramatic
but
than it
public
is.
safety would definitely be affected.
There's no way we could avoid having it impact public safety.
Yeah.
So, police officers, firefighters, fire stations, all those things would unfortunately feel the impact if that didn't pass. Moving on to question 2.
Yes. Bond program. Right?
Yes. So the way that we build things in the city of Mesa and everywhere else is issuing bonds. These are for things that last more than 20 years, like fire stations and police stations, those types of things. And so question 2 is a bond question, saying can the city of Mesa borrow money by issuing bonds to build, certain things that last for in excess of 20 years, and all of these are related to public safety. So specifically, we're talking about 2 new fire stations. Mm-hmm. As you know, the Mesa is growing very quickly, and as we do that, we're developing new areas that don't have fire stations,
right? And
so that impacts our response times. A police officer we can put them in a Tahoe and send them to the corner of Mesa, right? And so particularly for fire department response times, it's important that we build fire stations. Mm-hmm. So question 2 is all public safety buildings. It's 2 new fire stations. It's remodeling a 3rd fire station. And then it's building a couple of buildings for the police department for an evidence holding facility and remodeling their headquarters, which if you've been in the police headquarters.
Yes, lately, I
have. It's a pretty rough building.
Yeah.
And it's a desperate need of getting some work. It's not functioning as well as we'd like it to. And then I mentioned we're hiring a lot of new police officers and firefighters right mm-hmm. now. Yesterday, I was at our police and public safety training facility, mm-hmm. and that there was not an empty parking place there. I mean, we are running 2 police academies a year and a fire academy every year, and continuing to retrain all of our existing public safety people. So that building, that campus of buildings, is overtaxed right now. And sure. So we need to make some improvements there so that we can keep up with our capacity to train public safety people. So those are the buildings that we need to build for public safety. And in order to finance those, that's question 2.
Yeah. And you mentioned response time, and people need to understand and remember that it's not just fire, right? It's fire and medical.
Right. Yes. Right. Most of the times that the fire department is rolling into a call, 80-90% of the time it's medical.
Right.
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 So yeah, these really are life and death issues, and
right.
It's really important that we keep up to date on having good public safety facilities. So the other 2 questions that are on the ballot,
yes.
These are amendments to our city charter. Mm-hmm. People might already understand that the equivalent of the United States Constitution on the local, the U.S. has a constitution, the state has a constitution, cities have a document called a charter.
Right.
So that's essentially our constitution. And occasionally we have to update the charter because things change or things evolve or there's better ideas. So this year we have put 2 questions, the Proposition 476 and Proposition 477, asking the voters to amend the charter. 476 has to do with allowing the Mesa city manager to meet with public safety unions.
You talk about what meet and confer.
Yes,
what that is.
Back when the Mesa City Charter was written in the early 1960s, they put language in there that says that thou shalt not engage in collective bargaining. In other words, the the folks who wrote the Mesa City Charter were concerned that we could get into a labor dispute with our public safety employees that might culminate in a strike. Certainly, the idea of police officers, firefighters going on strike, that's pretty scary. So now that's already against the state law.
Mm-hmm.
But the folks who wrote the charter said, well, what if the state law changes? We want to just have belts and suspenders at the same time. So let's have a Mesa City Charter that says, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow, for a process, because collective bargaining is this legal process where labor and management meet. If they declare an impasse, it goes to arbitration, and strikes are always a potential in that scenario. So I'm saying it's wisely, they included this language that says we're not going to do collective bargaining with our employees. Now, the problem is that's kind of vague. And so does that mean, well, does that mean we can't talk to our employees? If we want to, we're in a very competitive workforce environment right now. And we are recruiting police officers and firefighters. We're competing with every other city.
Sure.
As far as wages and benefits. And so we want to be good employers, and we want to talk to our employee groups and find out what their concerns are and address them. We can do that without collective bargaining. It's just, the city manager is authorized to sit down and talk to the employee groups, and they can discuss how to be better employers, whatever concerns they might have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not collective bargaining. It's called meet and confer. It's just what it sounds like, sitting down and talking about our issues. So we think that we're already allowed to do that because that's not collective bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
But every time we do sit down with the labor group, some people might ask the question, you're waddling like a duck and you're quacking like a duck. We think you're a duck. We think you're violating the charter.
Yeah. And
so just to eliminate that
mm-hmm.
that cloud that might be over the process of talking to our employees, we're going to amend the charter we're going to leave in the prohibition against collective bargaining. We're just adding some language that says, yes, we don't do collective bargaining, but the city manager can sit down and meet and confer with employees. So,
that makes sense.
So we recommend it. We think it's a good idea. We've
Mm-hmm.
talked to some of the folks who wrote the charter. They say, oh yeah, that's not what we were. It was never our intention that the city manager couldn't talk to his employees. So
good.
we hope the people understand that.
Good. So explain Prop 477.
477 is another, because the charter was written back in the 1960s. It says that anytime the city wants to spend more than, and I think this has even been updated, anytime the city wants to spend more than $25,000, it has to be voted on at a city council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because we're such a large city right now,
spending that frequently, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. There's a long list of laws that apply to procurement.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime the city buys anything, it's very much by the book, and very scrutinized, and multiple bids have to be, solicited, and
right.
So it's very regulated. And it's just this number is become out of date because this makes our city council agenda about an inch thicker than it needs to be. So what this does is allow the city to just set by ordinance to raise that amount, depending on how inflation, figures into things, so that we are still talking about things that are important, big expenditures,
mm-hmm.
but we're raising that threshold a little bit just so we don't have so much bureaucracy going on. So those are, that's question 1, question 2, and proposition 476 and 477.
So what happens if any of these are voted down at the polls?
Yeah.
I mean, outcomes could be pretty bleak.
Well, yes, going back to that
The home rule.
Mm-hmm. That could, a few years ago, well, maybe a decade ago, Tucson lost a home rule election.
Oh my gosh.
And it was pretty devastating. If you know anyone from Tucson, they've been trying to recover from that for the last decade or so.
I can't even imagine.
And I'm not trying to disrespect Tucson, but frankly, the infrastructure there is wanting. I mean, the potholes are the norm. Mm-hmm. If you go to an intersection in Tucson, and so it's hard to recover from taking a $70-80 million hit. When that happens, the next time there's an election, the voters are going to say, "Oh my gosh, we made a mistake. We're going to, this place is falling apart. Mm-hmm. We're going to correct that mistake." But in the meantime, we'll have at least 2 years of having to live with, we've got the money, we just can't spend it. So that's we are particularly, losing question 1 would be tough. Question 2 is, again, the bonds for those public safety buildings. That too, would have a very harmful impact. It would put us again back at least a couple of years in our ability to keep up with the growth of our city. We couldn't build those 2 new fire stations. We couldn't remodel the fire station. We couldn't build those police facilities. So, and that, not to, again, to be dramatic, that will impact response times, because
we'd have to.
Where your fire truck is coming from has a lot to do with how fast it can get to your house. And then, so on the charter amendments, would the sky fall if the charter amendments failed? No, but we continue to have this awkward cloud over our head about when it comes to talking to our employees, and we'd continue to have city council meetings and agendas that are longer than they should be.
Sure.
The bureaucracy would be less effective, if we didn't update it. So all 4 of these questions, were important enough that the Mesa City Council thought it was a good idea for us to go to the voters, and I encourage everyone to vote yes on all of these.
Well, I appreciate that. I think when you're talking to people about, when we are talking to people about the election, people see signs for elected officials, but the ballot measures are not something that most people understand. So if they have questions or want to get more information, get involved, what can they do? Yes.
What you should be receiving, if you haven't already, and I think you probably already have, the publicity pamphlet. Mm-hmm. That's required by law. And people can, and then there's in their statements from the city and from others that specifically say, here's the details, here's how much money we're talking about, and hopefully that'll answer a lot of the questions you have. Right. There's also arguments in there from people that are both pro and con, mm-hmm. Expressing their point of view. So I think that will help as well. And then I just encourage people to ask questions. The city cannot, try to influence the outcome of an election. So city employees can't tell you how to vote. I am a city employee, but I'm also a politician. So I'm freed from the from the prohibition about trying to influence an election. Uh-huh. I obviously have my opinions, and I'm out trying to educate people. And like I've already said, I encourage people to vote for both propositions and both questions. And then just regular kind of housekeeping questions about voting. I mean, obviously we want everyone to vote. So sure. If you're not sure if you're registered to vote, if you don't know where if you want to request an early ballot and mm-hmm. and vote by mail, if your preference is to vote live and in person on the day of the election, those are all important questions and the sooner you get the answers to those questions, the better. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to be successful at this if you don't wait till the last minute. So there's a couple of good places to go to check up on that. One that I just checked out earlier this afternoon, and it worked very, very well. It's a website called beballotready.vote. And it just asks them, what's your name, what's your address, and then it lights everything up and it tells you, yes, you've got a ballot coming. Or
nice.
Yeah. And even after you vote, it'll tell you what the status of your ballot is. If you mailed it and you want to know, gee, I wonder if they ever got my ballot. This is the website that you can go to.
Very cool.
So beballotready.vote.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else people should know?
Oh, if you haven't requested, a lot of people like to vote, me included, like to vote by mail mm-hmm. because it gives me up. You can sit down at the kitchen table. You can call your friends, mm-hmm. people that you think might know, something that might influence the way you can just kind of take your time with it.
Sure.
So October the 28th is the deadline to request an early ballot.
Okay.
So if you don't like the idea of standing in line on uh-huh. election day, make sure and you're not already on the early ballot list. Uh-huh. October the 28th is the deadline to do that.
Good to know. All right.
I think that's it.
That's it? Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking time to come in. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll try to push this out because I think, again, we're anxious for people. It's okay to disagree on this stuff. We just want people to have the facts so that they can make a well-informed decision.
Great. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you, Sally.
This has been a Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business podcast. You can find all podcast episodes at iTunes, Spotify, or your own favorite podcast website. You can also find them online at mesachamber.org. Content of this podcast is copyright the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, unless otherwise noted.